Do you know anything about Hop Street and the French architecture that you see visible on that street?
Yeah, in fact, is quite a very interesting area in Nguyên Hop Street because most of the time when we speak about the French architecture or the French Quarter, we think about Chanongdao Street, Haibachung, in this area. And here we are a bit far from the former French Quarter, but still was very influenced and built by the French. And in fact, if it's a bit different from what we call the former French Quarter, it's mainly because of what's happened in 1902 when the train station was built and the railway was built, because in fact it's became like a border in the city, and then the development on the other side became less important. For example, if you look at the map before this time in 1890, when the French planned to develop Hanoi City, the developments go until here. I mean, at the end of Nguyen Tai Hop Street, near Kim Ma Street. But because of the train wasn't planned at that time. Because of the train, this development was a bit perturbed. So this is the key point to understand that it's a bit different from the former French Quarter. But in another hand, for sure, the development still, the urban development still was during the French time in this area, and it looks like more like a suburb area. So it means it's not as regular, as homogeneous of the former French Quarter, but is, we can say, a later development and with a mixed of use development. So there is some houses, a lot, but also some factories, and maybe less great equipment as a school or administration. So it's why, for me, what I really appreciate in this street is a lot of very nice house, and most of the house is not built during the beginning of the French period, but at the end of the French period. So very interesting shape also.
Can you be more specific about the details of the, for example, the architecture?
Yeah. So yeah, because of the time of the building, so it's mean mostly late of 1920, 1930, 1940. The architecture is a little different. At the beginning, the French, they built a lot of classical building, or they used the classical style or neoclassical style. But at that time, when they built Nguyen Tai Hop Street, they used more Art Deco style, or even modern style, or Indochina style. And for me, it's even more interesting, because the classical architecture, they build everywhere. So if you go in the north of Africa, in the central part of Africa, the French, they build also neoclassical building. But Art Deco, modernism, and especially Indochina style, no. They only in Hanoi and in maybe Saigon and Phnom Penh. So it's very interesting for that. You can see, for example, the house used now for the Goethe Institute is really what we call modern Art Deco style. So it means, what is the difference in terms of physical difference? They use a stylization of the design. For example, when there is something that looks like a flower, is not really a flower, but is a stylistic figure of a flower. Or they use more also geometric decoration, something like that. So it's really, really more modern.
So, what are the significant influences of the French architecture in how Hanoi looked in the past and now?
You mean generally in Hanoi?
Yeah.
In fact, we heard a lot about architecture for the influence, but I think it's even more than that. Is the urban way of life, because the architecture is buildings, but all the buildings that was built at that time wasn't isolated. Is inside. I mean, we can say inside a bigger complex, and then this bigger complex is a city, and in one hand, it's a way to make like an international city, even if the political situation was a bit into trouble. I mean, the colonization is not something that is easy. There is some the colonizator are dominative compared to with the people, so it's not an easy time, but it's a time where Hanoi was like an international city, and really a city. So it's why with the architecture there is all the uses of the building that's come with the architecture. So for example, the theater, there is very few theater in Asia at that time, and if you look at some other country colonized by UK, they don't build any theater. So in Hong Kong, is also a very big city. In Singapore, that is also a very big city. They don't have a theater from the beginning of the 20th century, but only Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, and Haiphong. So it's something that is very, very important, because it's not just an administrative building, or is not just for an economic function, but it's became something in links with the culture. So building a theater in Hanoi means that now some artists will come to make music, to make a theater, to make a show, and they come from everywhere in the world. So it's like this city became like an international city. So this, for me, is something much more than just a building. It's like a symbol. And also, when we speak about the urban way of life, is not only buildings, but is also the street, the square, the garden. So it means in Hanoi, it's a city where you can walk on the pathway, is with the large pathway, with the tree. The tree will give the shadow, and then it's very nice and quiet place to walk and to enjoy urban life. So it's some things that is maybe looks less interesting than buildings, architecture, but in fact is so important to create this urban way of life.
So, have you heard of the Tienbo printing factory? And what do you know about this 175, the location, 175 Nguyễn Thái Học Street?
So yeah, the 175 on Nguyễn Thái Học is really at the end of the street. I mean, if we come from the city, is a bit far. Because Nguyễn Thái Học is quite a long street. So it starts almost in the city center, and number 175 is quite far. So during the French time, it wasn't the city, in fact. It was really the end of the suburb. And it's why, if you look at some old maps, for a long time there is nothing there. Or maybe a rice field, but no buildings. And also, this area was also very interesting because there is another factory, the now is a Postef building, so it's not very far from here. They used to build to make bicycle at that time, and for sure it's all along the history. We put the factory at the limit of the city because we don't really want to have a factory inside the city where the people live. So it's why in 1950 and then after the French time, 1960, 1970, this area became an industrial area. And it's why there is the Tienbo factory in here.
And before it was a printing factory, it was a prison, and then money printing facility. So, what do you think about that history of the location?
Yeah, it's also once again, I think it's if this function is really because is the edge of the city. So the edge of the city have very specific functions that is different from the city center. But all of those functions are very interesting because is possible only on this kind of area, the edge of the city. So for me is even if there are different functions, they are all related with what we can call the edge of the city or the suburb.
And now many years have passed, and the functions of that location has been changed many times. Now there's a new project, but the term that the investor has to commit to is to preserve part of the old factory building and turn it into a museum. So from this example, what do you think about how we can both keep the old part and still